means a lot. Many months of organizing.
So one more member is parking right now, but we're just going to get started. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so thank you everyone for coming to this event today. Here supporting the Tampa5. It's super important that we stand and show this act of solidarity and really increase the amount of people that know about their case so we can fight against it. So just to give a little preview of kind of what the Tampa5 are and what they went through. So on March 6, 2023, Tampa Bay Students for a Democratic Society held a protest to fight back against DeSantis' anti-diversity bill, HB 99, at the University of South Florida. Protesters were met with violence from the cops, including being punched, kicked, and groped. Gia Davila, Laura Rodriguez, Chrisley Carpio, and Jeannie Kita were arrested and held in the back of hot cop cars as the police deliberately charged them over what they could possibly be charged with. They were originally charged with 1 felony and 2 to 3 misdemeanors each, with a bail of around $3,000 per person. 30 days after initial charges, after the initial arrest, Lauren Pinheiro was notified via email from the university that academic and criminal charges were being filed against her as well. A warrant was put out for her arrest, and she too had to pay near $3,000 bail when turning herself into jail. Some of those arrested lost their jobs, including campus worker and ASME union member Chrisley Carpio, who was fired by USF despite maintaining a spotless record during her 7-year career at the institution. Others experienced threats of expulsion and talk of not being allowed to graduate, despite video evidence that clearly shows the police as the aggressors in the situation. Later, the university released a report comparing the original student protest to an active shooter situation on campus, falsely claiming that procedures for an active shooter situation had to be used in response to the student demonstrations. This is a clear attack on student rights to demonstrate. And after the community organized and the Tampa5 spoke out against these false charges, they were given an unconfirmed pretrial intervention, but only if the Tampa5 wrote an apology letter to the police officers who attacked and groped them, and if the police accepted it. This was considered unacceptable and rejected by the heroic young women who suffered the unprovoked attack for simply exercising their freedom of speech. In response, the state doubled the felony counts on 3 of the 5 who are now facing up to 10 years in prison for using their First Amendment rights to protest. So I'll just give a quick introduction actually they can give an introduction for themselves. Let's just start from this way down and then they'll give their little spiel to y'all.
Yes, so my name is Chrisley Carpio, and I was the campus worker and a member of the American Federation of Municipal, State, and County Employees, Local 3342, who worked at USF.
My name is Gia Davila. I'm a member of Tampa Bay SDS.
My name is Laura Pinheiro. I'm also a member of Tampa Bay SDS.
My name is Laura Rodriguez. I'm a member of Tampa Bay Community Action Committee. I was just there on my day off.
Yeah, and then we'll go ahead and go into our presentation because we do have something prepared. Promise.
Alright, just to give y'all a lay of like the land of what Ron DeSantis has been doing. I know we're all in Florida, so we know a bit, but I think it's good to sum it up because like the time that he's been in office has been crazy, so many twists and turns, and I just want to remind everyone of some of the things that have happened, not in recent memory, but in his tenure as governor. So during the George Floyd rebellion, which a lot of people participated in and was a part of, we saw millions of Floridians get out on the streets, and millions across the world do the same. And Ron DeSantis' response was to essentially try to double down on the protesting. So he passed what he referred to as the anti-riot bill, which we know is just anti-protest, which makes it illegal for protesters to take the streets, makes it legal for a car to hit them, and just a whole host of other things because, and what was happening was just, I'm sorry, that really threw me off. Yeah, that was it was all in effect of Ron DeSantis to try to put down protesters, to try to suppress the people's movement, and we've seen people across the country do the same thing. The cop city in Atlanta is being built because of the George Floyd uprising, because the police could not control the people, so that's why they want to build this mock cities instead of actually giving money to affordable housing or actually improving the infrastructure. They want to build a fake city to teach police how to put down the people's movements. And, just a whole host of other things that Ron DeSantis has done. So he, as we all know, he made it mandatory for K through 12 teachers to out their students. He put the bathroom ban on folks. He cut funding and access to trans health care. He gutted public sector unions by making it impossible for them to thrive under the Florida law, except for the police union. He fired not one, but 2 elected state attorneys. So, like, y'all have a fired elected state attorney. Tampa has a fired elected state attorney. And Tampa was replaced by Susie Lopez, who lost to Andrew Warren and who is Ron DeSantis' puppet. Literally boo. Literally boo. So, he's attacked the people's movement, student movement, queer movements. He passed an anti-immigration bill, which makes it a felony to drive undocumented people in the state of Florida. So not only do people risk deportation for driving, like, say, their cousin to work, but they also face time in prison for, helping their family members out. And he also sent money over to the state of Texas to fund the killing devices used at the border, used to militarize the Mexico-U.S. border. Those buoys with razors in the middle, that's directly funded by Ron DeSantis in the state of Florida. And they've also sent state troopers over to Texas. And apart from his attacks on everybody, he's also attacked specifically black folks here in the state. But one of his most egregious things is he banned a portion of AP African American history, which takes figures like Angela Davis out of textbooks. The same figures that are talking about black liberation, that give steps for black folks to take power in their situation, to demand for their right to know their own history, to demand the end to gerrymandering and the right for our basic rights and whatnot. And he, apart of from HB 999, one more 9 in there, that program, for a little context, after 2020, a lot of the universities started funding the diversity, equity, and inclusion program and made that integrated throughout the entirety of the school. So now all of the funding that's going to Africana studies, that's going to women and gender studies, all of the radical feminist theories or radical theory classes that you have, as well as multicultural groups, the Divine Nine, sororities and fraternity organizations are being funded through the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office. So when he passed the legislation that's banned not only the funding of it and being able to teach any of those classes and put a gag on the word diversity, he has effectively ended all of these programs in the future. So every student who is a women and genders major, if they switch out of the major, they can't come back to it. The students who are in high school right now can't get those majors anymore. And these are majors that people have literally fought decades for. The movements in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, everything that we have ever won is because students were out on the streets asking and demanding for these. If we remember the Chicano walkouts that happened in 68, where 15,000 students were demanding that they not be reprimanded for speaking Spanish in school, that they not be beat up by the police, that they be taught their own history, not some whitewashed version of it, and that teachers, especially in elementary school, learn Spanish to help with the kids who, these are actual tangible demands that people were fighting for. Every Chicana studies that exists now, every Africana studies that ever exist now, it exists because people demanded it for it. And so we can't let these attacks that Ron DeSantis is doing take back the wins that we have already won. This bill also affects your professors too. It affects their tenure, and tenure is something that they are at the school for however many years, and they like earn their right and earn their place in their school. But to have a post-tenure review, which means if they ever display some type of leftist or radical quote-unquote theory or ideas in, say they're like an economics professor, they can get fired immediately for that. So it affects the people who might not go with the Republican agenda, with the Ron DeSantis agenda that we're seeing all across the state of Florida. And we know that this is going to happen because we've already seen it happen. At New College, they fired the entire board of trustees, replaced it with people who are bank investors, with people who are like ex-football players and realtors, and they're firing all of the professors who are like a little bit leftist or who are a little bit liberal because it doesn't fit with their agenda. So we see this public entity being overtaken by Ron DeSantis and his cronies, having a mass exodus of professors and students at one college in Florida, and it's bound to happen to all the rest if we do not stop it where it's at right now. Not only must we like defend all of the wins that we've ever like won, but we must strive for more. It's not to keep the bar the same, it's to raise the level for everybody, because we know there are problems that exist right now that need to be better. We know that there's still discrimination in classes, that a lot of the professors are majority white at PWI schools, which are in black communities in Tampa. Like where USF sits is in the middle of a majority black community. And to look at the population and in the biology department, which is one of the biggest departments at the university, only be 2 black professors is crazy. Crazy. And this is a school that pumps out like medical like students. And to have the majority of these medical students not be like represented in their professors is like absolutely abhorrent. But that's kind of what Ron DeSantis has been doing in the state of Florida, and we know that we have to like push back against it.
I'd like to start off with a chant, if that's okay with everyone.
Yeah.
So, DeSantis!
Down with DeSantis!
Yeah, so seeing what happened at New College, that they abolished their diversity, equity, inclusion programs, they abolished their women's and gender studies programs, we knew that our school was likely to be next. We also saw how our school has already complied to DeSantis' request. We knew that they would probably roll over. So actually, a few weeks before we had our protest, Ron DeSantis requested gender information on students' use of gender-affirming care on campus. That's private medical information that he requested, and despite students protesting, despite there being petitions, despite students making it very clear that that is information that he should not have, our school still handed over that information willingly. And they released a statement saying that they did. They also put the search for vice president of DEI on pause because of the uncertainty of the future of that program, making it very, very clear to us that they had every intention of closing down the DEI office if requested to do so. So seeing that, we knew we had a protest. Seeing what happened at New College, we knew we had a protest, and also knowing our history, like Laura said, we know the history of struggle that led to these programs in the first place. It was Chicanos in East LA fighting for Chicano studies. It was African Americans occupying buildings, sitting in the president's office that got us African American studies in the first place. It was the protests of the women's movement that got women's and gender studies programs across colleges across the country. So we knew we had a protest, and that's exactly what we did. So on March 6th, we held a protest at the University of South Florida against House Bill 999. This was a bill that was going to remove ban funding for diversity programs, ethnic studies, women's and gender studies, multicultural groups, and really anything that has to do with diversity. So we saw this as a huge attack on our rights, a huge attack on history. And so we held a protest that day where we marched to the president's office, and we wanted to get a meeting with her. We wanted to sit down with her. We wanted her to commit to protecting diversity on campus by releasing a public statement against DeSantis and with students. And we also wanted her to resume that search for vice president. To us, these were very simple things to ask for. And we thought, as students, we had a right to meet with our president. So that's what we did. We marched to that building. We were in the building for maybe 5 minutes, holding banners that said, increase Black enrollment, protect diversity, equity, and inclusion, and holding signs that had to do with protecting trans students, protecting Black students. And it was a very normal protest that I'm sure many of you have been to before. We were just standing in a building. It was an empty lobby, actually, and we were chanting. And pretty soon, about 15 USF police officers entered the building. The chief of police very quickly grabbed a student without warning. She was actually mid-sentence, and she nearly fell to the floor. From there, all of the police officers joined in and started to brutalize students. I saw my friends get kicked in the head, pushed against walls, pushed into concrete. Gia was groped by the chief of police. Someone's nose piercing was ripped out. I was punched so hard in the head, I thought I was getting hit with a baton. So they brutalized us simply because we dared to stand up against Ron DeSantis, because we said that our rights matter, that students should be able to learn our history. And to them, that was an affront. So they decided to brutalize us, and not only then, they arrested 4 students that day, or 4 protesters that day. So they arrested Chrisley, a campus worker, Gia, a student, Laura, who came off on her day from work, and a community activist, and Jeannie Kita. So they were charged with a felony for battery on a law enforcement officer, which carries 5 years in prison. And they were also charged with 2 misdemeanors, one for resisting arrest without violence, and another for disrupting campus activity. So they got sent to jail that day, and luckily, people around the country gathered around us. They supported us immediately. National SDS put up calls for call-ins and for bail funds, and that very same night, we were able to get them released because of the amount of people calling in. It is only because of the people calling in that we were able to get them released. Every single one of our So I was clearly not arrested that day, so you're probably wondering how I got into this. But I was continuing to protest on campus. I wasn't banned, unlike the others, so I was on campus protesting, leading protests. I was talking to the press. I was making it very clear that what happened to us was wrong. I was making it very clear that the people of Florida do not stand with DeSantis. And because I was being so loud, so bold, they had a problem with that. And a month later, I received notice that I was being charged as well with the exact same charges. Shame. This makes it very clear to us that our case is political. If I had shut up, if I had shut my mouth, stopped going to protest, stopped being bold and loud and in people's face and saying that DeSantis is an issue, that the people don't stand with DeSantis, they would not have charged me, but because I did, they ended up charging me because they want us to be silent. The purpose of these charges is they don't want us out there protesting. They don't want us to be loud. They don't want our dissent against DeSantis. But that's exactly why we're going to not be silent, right? We're going to continue talking up. We're going to continue protesting. We know that protest is how we win. We know that talking is how we win. We're out here on the speaking tour. We're going to be very loud, and that's how we're going to fight back. That's how we're going to get the charges dropped, or that's how we're going to be found innocent. And that's how we're going to protect student movement across the country, because this is not just an attack on the 5 of us. It's an attack on student protests everywhere.
I'll chant, protesting is not a crime, and you chant, drop the charges now. Protesting is not a crime.
Drop the charges now.
Protesting is not a crime.
Drop the charges now.
So that sounded like a lot, but that was actually just day one, just the very beginning of the fight that we're waging now. The reason that we've gone to over 20 states and cities at this point, telling our story. The very next day, the students were sent notices where they were getting stacked with at least half a dozen code of conduct charges, and they were suspended from their classes. They were told you can't communicate with your professors, you can't do any homework, you can't come to class, you were banned from campus, you cannot talk to anyone about what happened, and now you have to go to these hearings where you could be suspended or even expelled. I, a worker who was working in the admissions department at that point, and I'd actually spent years working in the financial aid department instead, and I was a union member too, right? A union member has protections and a contract with their employer that prevent you from just getting fired off the bat. I was put on paid administrative leave, which is the status that they put you in when they're trying to fire you and they haven't figured out how to do it yet, because they have to violate your contract to do it. And I was told you can't talk to anyone at the university about what happened to you except for HR and your supervisor. You can't come to work. You are suspended. You're on paid admin leave. So there were, and by the way, too, that's a violation of your union rights, your federally protected constitutional Weingarten rights, because you always have the right to representation. You always have the right to have a steward come in and talk about your case, and you do have the right to represent yourself. And the university was trying to scare me and say that I didn't. They were trying to lie and use these scare tactics to keep us silent. They put all of us in that position where everyone was sent a notice, keep your mouth shut, don't say anything, don't come to class, don't talk about what happened, you have to keep our secret and protect USF. And they did the same with me, putting my job on the line as they put the students' degrees on the line. Well, we were still covered in injuries that week. We were still looking for a lawyer, which we had never had to do before, because Never before had we seen a situation where the police went in that brutally on protesters. We've seen it at giant, protests where there are thousands of people, but this was a group of 25 to 30 students, young people holding like cardboard signs with rainbow flags and existence is resistance, like simple slogans like that. And they viewed that as, I don't think a physical threat was present that day. They viewed it as a political threat. That was the only threat that was present that day. So we were still covered in all these injuries, traumatized by what we had seen, and we had these two paths before us: keep your mouth shut, protect USF, or come out and say something, decide to make a fight of it. Everything has just begun. We're not going to give up on what we decided to protest for that day. Someone has to say something against what DeSantis is doing that's wrong, and that was the choice that we made. That was the choice that put us in front of you today. Despite being covered in injuries, we had to have a protest that week. We actually had a press conference. We held it across the street since we were banned from campus. We couldn't even walk back onto the campus without being threatened with arrest. But we wanted the USF, we wanted the university, the police, and the president to know what we were doing. We wanted to make our stance clear. No, we will not be silent. No, we will not keep your promises. No, or we will not keep our mouths shut. No, we're not going to keep our heads down. We're going to keep fighting because what we were doing was right, and we're going to keep fighting out there. SDS is going to keep protesting HB 999, and now we're going to protest to drop the charges. So we made that very clear from the very first week. We continued having protests. We continued organizing against the bill, too. Just because we were being attacked didn't mean that Congress was going to stop in its attacks. And they decided, they saw the stance that we took, and they decided to ramp things up. A month after the day of the protest, even though they could have arrested Lauren that day, even though it was unlawful, all of the arrests that they were doing, they decided to charge Lauren with the same things that we had gotten. So the misdemeanor resisting arrest with nonviolence, disrupting campus activity, both of those are misdemeanors, and then the felony battery upon law enforcement. And then a few days after that, they floated, they discussed or brought up the potential possibility, and it wasn't confirmed. They said they would think about it if SDS wrote admissions saying that the violence that day was started by the students, if we admitted to doing battery upon law enforcement, and that we wrote apologies to each of the cops who beat us that day, including a cop who groped one of the students, and we have actually a screen capture image of it too. So it's undeniable. Everybody knows what happened, and they still thought that they could force us to do that, and we said no. We're not sorry. We're not guilty. What SDS was doing that day was the right thing to do. We would do it again. This is the side of history that we stand on, and we're not taking that stupid fake offer. You can shove it in the way the sun comes down. That's why we're here today. They immediately retaliated. They went and took three of us, Laura Rodriguez, Chrisley Carpio, and Jeannie Kita, and added an additional officer charging battery upon law enforcement. So that's how some of us are actually looking at 10 years instead of just 5, because they thought they could continue to try to scare us. But we decided to power through. It was clear to us that if we could talk about our case publicly, if we could keep organizing, the more people we talked to, the more it was clear how unpopular DeSantis' policies were, and the more people could actually rally, and the protests against HB 999 continuously got bigger. So we weren't going to stop, and they were going to use these repression tactics, which is the purpose of them, but we weren't going to stop either. And we're even willing to go to trial because we know what happened that day, and we know that what we were doing was the right thing to do. As all of this was happening, I was made to appear via Zoom to a pre-firing hearing, and the students were called to a series of code of conduct hearings where they were made to talk for hours in gruesome detail about something that has putting criminal charges on them, right? So they were made to defend themselves in front of the university, who was recording every step of the way. Their degrees were on the line, and they actually said, you can't share this link with anybody. It was on Zoom, so no one could come to support them. You can't talk about what's happening. All of these are supposed to be secret, but we defied that. We knew that the same way we got out of jail was people calling about our case. We had to do the same thing with the code of conduct hearings. There was not a single day that there wasn't students with people behind them testifying on camera. We put banners behind them. We had people in SDS shirts saying drop the charges. We had protesters watching, making direct eye contact. So it was clear to the university that if they were going to expel the students, they had to do it with the whole country watching. We had all of SDS calling from various schools in various states saying, don't expel students for protesting. You violated the First Amendment rights. Don't you dare. And as a result, 2 of the students actually managed to graduate, and they walked the stage. Who also got a 4.0. So I like to add that. I don't know how you did it with all of the things, but just proof that we'll stop at nothing. But you don't need to have a 4.0 to be in this movement. I certainly did not. I have 4.0 in the streets. So it was clear to us from that moment that if we were going to win anything in this case, whether it was getting released from jail the same day that they put us in there, which made the cops very unhappy, or the students getting their degrees despite being found guilty in the code of conduct charges, it would be through organizing, it would be through rallying everyone who disagrees with DeSantis and showing that the power of people can't be stopped, and we're going to call for Susie Lopez to drop the charges. So those were the lessons that we learned throughout the evolution of the case.
So proud of you guys. You guys are doing really good. I'm also going to do a chant. So, racist, sexist, anti-gay.
Ron DeSantis, go away.
Racist, sexist, anti-gay.
Ron DeSantis, go away.
Racist, sexist, anti-gay.
Ron DeSantis, go away.
Okay, thank you. So right now we're here. We're gearing up for trial. We're ready, and we know, first off, we know that we're innocent, that we did nothing wrong, that we're actually in the right protesting that day, that more students, more administrators should have been standing up, more workers should have been standing up against what Ron DeSantis is doing. He is trying to actively run the state of Florida into the ground, and he's trying to, criminalize any sort of resistance against that. If the state wants to take us to trial saying that protesting is a crime, we're going to fight like hell against that. We're ready to stand up against this. And we also know, though, that despite being innocent, despite having been in the right, that the legal system doesn't always have people's back who are innocent. So we're ready to organize around our case as well. Right now, we have been going on, we're trying to raise the awareness about our case, basically, raise it to a national level. We see this as a national issue. Ron DeSantis is running for president. He's already announced that. We know he sees Florida to be this ground zero for all of this legislation. And we will not stand for that being passed at a national level. We won't stand for it passing here in Florida. We also know that as soon as a bill gets passed here in Florida, anything that's attacking the people of Florida, it's passed all through the South, all through the North. It's just a matter of time before it spreads, before these reactionary Republicans attack the people of their states. And we really want to be at the forefront of rallying people against DeSantis. We know that these legislations, whether it be attacks on diversity, attacks on LGBTQ people, attacks on immigrants, it affects all of us. Whether you are from those backgrounds or not, these bills spread out and attack all of us. And as students, as community members, we feel really strongly about this. So we've been going on this national speaking tour, which is why we're here today. We've been all across the country at this point, from the West Coast to the East Coast, North, South. We've seen it all because we really want to spread awareness about what's going on. We know that the media doesn't often cover these issues, despite they've been pretty kind to us lately. But, we've been speaking out about our case. We know that actually at our last court date, the prosecutor turned to us and to the judge said that we needed to shut up about our case and stop. He said my name in specific, that we needed to stop talking publicly about what happened to us, and we're here to say we will not be doing that. Obviously, we're going to continue to protest for what's right. We're going to still say down with DeSantis, defend diversity programs, and if they want to put us on trial for that, then so be it. We'll just bring to light everything that they did that day, because they want to shut us up. Well, that's not going to happen. The Republicans are so scared to see a group of, strong women fighting back against this. Well, they're going to have to get used to it because it's happening all across Florida. Yeah. So we're getting ready for our trial. Our trial starts December 12th. And we have a pretrial December 5th. National SDS has already called a National Day of Action, so we're hoping that cities all across the United States participate in that, as they have been. yeah, we've been so loved throughout this whole experience. Call-ins, National Days of Action, cities across the country protesting for us. But we're really hoping that people across Florida will come to our trial, pack the court, stand up against DeSantis and say, we will not accept this, we will not let you jail student protesters, simply for speaking up loudly against DeSantis. So yeah, basically, if you'd like to get involved in our case or help us out in any way, one thing that we really appreciate is donating. It really helps us a lot. A lot of us, like we said, lost our jobs through this whole process, and we're still trying to obviously make ends meet, make rent, but also go on this national speaking tour, taking time off of work to be here today. Also signing the petition, it's the peoplespetition.org/Tampa5. You can sign on as an individual or as an organization. It's greatly appreciated, and it really shows the amount of mass support that we have to get these charges dropped. Another really cool thing that you can do is, if you're a part of an organization, pass a resolution, and you can also mail it to the state attorney, which is like really annoying to them, getting all these letters saying drop the charges, because they want to act like they don't care about our case, that they hardly know what's going on when they're actively like doubling felony counts. We know that that's a lie. And yeah, like I said, coming to Tampa, I almost said Florida, coming to Tampa on the day of our trial, packing the court, we super appreciate it. So yeah, I guess, and also, one thing you can do to build up the movement in general is stay active, attend local protests, join an SDS chapter, join, I don't know, anything you have locally. Yeah, it's super, super good. So I'm gonna end with a chant. So, dare to struggle,
Dare to win!
Dare to struggle,
Dare to win!
Dare to struggle,
Dare to win!
So now, does anyone have any questions? We'll have a little Q&A with the Tampa5 city.
I actually wanted to ask, are we as an organization planning a carpool to attend their trial? Because we all know I don't have a car, so I'm looking at you.
That sounds like a great idea. Yeah, for the 12th, right?
Yep.
Yes, so yeah, we will
I
be
thought it was
attending.
the 13th.
Oh
yeah.
12th is the start of the trial, but technically it's jury selection.
Okay.
So people will not be able to pack the courts on that day, but we still want people to attend and be there in support. And then the 13th will likely be when people can actually come in.
So maybe like a 2-day event kind of thing?
Sounds
Yeah.
good.
What day of the week is that? Does anybody know about?
The 12th is a
Tuesday
Tuesday.
and Wednesday.
Tuesday and Wednesday? Okay, so some of us will probably have to take off work. I'm down for that. If what about here with cars? Anybody?
I'd be down. I just
You
got a new
down?
car.
I don't like my job anyway.
Yeah, I can help out with gas and all that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are we gonna try to make it a 2-day event kind of thing? Like stay there?
We'll see.
Yeah.
Depends on work.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
Definitely getting there.
I mean, if you can get me out there, I can find my own way back home. Because I used to be a hobo, as a lot of y'all know. So.
Any other questions for the Tampa5? I know I have one for sure. Well, I'll start it off.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, I know that you guys have been throughout a lot of different cities and meeting up with a lot of different organizations and meeting up with people perhaps you've never met, showing solidarity. So I wanted to know how it felt to be able to see that from the national community. I know for me, it's been inspiring, in situations like seeing GF link up with the Brown Berets, and I know that Chairman Paul went to go see y'all and everything like that. So it was really cool from my perspective to see that, and really encouraging. But I wanted to know, despite the circumstances, how has that encouraged y'all to continue pushing forward?
Yeah, I think it's only encouraged us and made us feel, more validated. I think something like this is obviously very scary and it can be isolating, but knowing that there's so much support around us, I've been saying this in every city, and I'm sure y'all have been saying the same thing. That's been keeping me going the most. Seeing how many people support us completely and fully, and going on this national tour really showed that on a bigger level. Because obviously before, I knew that we had support from people in national SDS who had helped with these call-ins and helped get us out of jail and all of these things. But actually seeing people face to face in every other city from all walks of life, from all organizations, it was really inspiring, and it's especially inspiring that people are not afraid to protest or organize because of our case. The very same day that people were arrested, SDS chapters had protests. That entire week they had protests. So I think it's been really invigorating and only makes me want to continue to organize more.
Yeah, and then one thing that we've been emphasizing on the tour is at the same time, because didn't mention, USF fired me. I'm trying to get my job back. I have a grievance with my union. And USF is late with the response. We're taking it to arbitration. So we've actually, because while this was all happening in the background, DeSantis passed, and Laura mentioned it, but the anti-union bill that decertifies all of the public sector unions that don't have a 60% membership. And Florida is a right to work state, so you get all the benefits of that without having to be a member of a union. So in a place where they made it impossible already to be a member, now you're being punished for not having those members. So it effectively strips most, if not all, of the public sector unions of their certification. So, workers have a stake in this too. And we managed to get a lot of support from at the defense conference that we had in June. There was over 130 people, and there were people from the ACLU, so lawyers organizations, civil rights organizations, Black Lives Matter grassroots movement was there, and the West Central Florida Labor Council president spoke, and they passed a resolution, and they've actually been sending it to other CLCs around the country. And Wisconsin actually just recently, Milwaukee recently had the CLC pass a resolution for us, and they represent like hundreds of thousands of workers. So like we've, not ever worked with like this big variety of organizations before. So it's been really amazing to see, and all because people do not want to see, not only do they not want DeSantis to become president, they don't want copycat bills popping up in their states too. So everyone is like, treating this as a rallying cry, like smash the copycat bills. Ohio has a copycat bill like this. We spoke at a school that actually invited us, Bowling Green State University, because of their copycat bill, and they had a student facing charges as well. They had a lot of the same things that we have going on. So they wanted, someone speaking to show people, look, we're not alone. We can do this together. It's been amazing to see all of that.
Any other questions?
Yeah, obviously this has been quite an experience, right? So I just want to know, if at all, how has this experience changed the way you organize or the way you deal with protesting in the future, or maybe the topics that you choose to speak about at panels? How has this experience kind of changed the way you go about that, if at all?
Yeah, I feel like so obviously through this whole experience, the school has been trying to shut us up, the state's been trying to shut us up, and I feel only more invigorated to continue protesting. I feel like all of us have been really inspired by this in some way or another, where it's we see how much support we have on a national level, and that's allowed us to really feel invigorated in this fight. And we know that obviously we need to stand out, for the movement, for ourselves. We need to stand up against this, but yeah, I feel it's only made me more angry at these systems that have put all of this on us, and seeing now I have a totally new perspective on the justice system, the injustice system, the legal system. So yeah, I just feel more angry, more loud. Yeah.
If anything, it's really helped solidify the connection between the history and the people's movement and what we're going through today. Because one of the reasons we decided to have this national defense campaign is an organization that I'm a part of. It's the parent chapter of my organization is NARPR, which formed out of the Free Angela Davis movement. So that was a Free Angela Davis and all political prisoners. And what the Tampa5, what we've decided to do is defend the Tampa5 and all student protesters, because we know how connected that is. Just a week after we were after we were arrested, two pro-abortion protesters at the University of Florida got arrested and charged with the exact same things that we were. We know that the FAU protester who got, pro-Palestinian protester who got charged about 3 weeks ago got charged with the exact same things we're being charged with. And we know during the George Floyd Rebellion that when the Jax 5 and the Tally 19 were arrested, and in Tampa, it was 67 protesters on the 4th of July, that they, the most egregious charges were the exact same charges that we got. So we know that this is a tactic that people have been using, so it's only solidified, if they double down, we triple down,
This is more a boring answer, I guess, but it's made us learn a lot more about the legal system and how to advocate for ourselves as protesters and how to help other protesters out who might have been arrested. We've learned a lot about bail, we've learned a lot about call-ins, we've learned a lot about court appearances and all of these things, press conferences. At the National SDS Convention, I actually gave a workshop on how to combat political repression, which kind of condensed everything that we've learned from our case in the past year, and how important it is to fight against charges like this, and also how important it is to find a lawyer, how you should go about a bail fund, how you can use social media to your advantage to get the case out there. So I think we've learned a lot of really important tactics that we can use to help out with other protesters, especially right now when there's protesters getting arrested every day because of Palestine right now. An SDSer was just arrested the other day. There's protesters in Tampa that were arrested, and through everything we've learned, we've been able to kind of give people tips and help them out that way.
And as a direct example of that, the protester who was arrested from Florida Palestine Network yesterday, we actually helped make the graphic for them and help organize the call-in for that event. And then they took that and ran with it, and they had press at the jail, and they were there until her release and announced when she was released. And so that's exactly, and she was released earlier than expected. They weren't even expecting her to get out till this morning, and she got out at 1 a.m. So it's that type of stuff, that solidarity and that experience helps us, like with the People's Movement all throughout.
I was actually living in Tallahassee when the Taliban 18 were arrested, and the person that was charged with the most egregious charge, the battery on a police officer, I was sitting in the trial, and the police lied through their teeth the entire time. Shame lied about photographs that were supposedly the attack on the police officer, and he ended up being found not guilty because they Exactly. So it really shows how we have to stand together, and we really have to show up for our people that are under attack. And actually, my one question was kind of how you see these new attacks on Palestinian student protesting, how you kind of see that fitting into the attacks on DEI and what y'all have been facing in general.
Yeah, I mean, it's very clearly connected to us. It's a part of a bigger attack on protests and a bigger attack on the student movement. So we're seeing attacks on what we're allowed to protest on campus and also what we're allowed to learn on campus. And at the same time, DeSantis is trying to shut down SGP chapters. So they don't want students to advocate for our rights and to take to the streets or to take to the campus and protest, or to even talk about things that go against DeSantis's right-wing agenda and his Zionist agenda as well. And it's not just in Florida. Nationally, the Senate passed a resolution that also tried to stop students from protesting for Palestine. They called students who protest terrorists. So this is a part of a broader movement of attack on our First Amendment right to protest. And I think it is very connected to our case because of that.
Cassia, Obsidian, and then Diego.
So why do you think they were so set on sort of shutting you guys up? Why did they want you all doing and speaking about them?
So I think they revealed, I won't go into much detail about this, but in the police reports, they revealed sort of accidentally that they had been watching SDS since January because SDS disrupted the inauguration of the new president, Ray Allah, with an increased black enrollment banner. Oh, what a horrible disruption. Oh, now she has to increase black enrollment. Oh my God. So they were really, I think they had a vendetta, and I don't think this is uncommon. I think the campus police, they only formed at universities in the 60s and 70s in response to the protests against the Vietnam War. So that is when they began to pop up. So that's the only thing that they really reliably do, because we know they're not effective at helping, deal with domestic assault or sexual violence. So I think they, from everything we've seen, they came in set to attack and get revenge on SDS. And I think they know what happened that day and how violent it was. They went in they thought they were, street fighting against, they thought they were in an action movie or something. And it was 18-year-olds to, I was probably the oldest person there. I'm 31, and they were throwing people on the ground, and, the police chief wasn't even in uniform, so I think they knew what happened and that there was a potential list of lawsuits they were looking at, so they would have to demonize us to protect themselves. I think that's the choice that they made. And now they're gonna pay because maybe we wouldn't have had a lawyer before, but we certainly have one now.
Oh, sorry. Were you gonna say something? Oh, okay. Just to add to, I think that, I was arrested first, so I was actually in the cop car while they were talking about who they were gonna go back and target, and I heard a lot of racist things, I heard a lot of transphobic things. And we don't forget that stuff easily, so obviously, like, they wanna take us to trial, well, let's hear about all the shit you said, like, excuse me. Sorry.
Body cams.
They actually don't have body
Oh.
cams. Yeah, but, that's pretty. Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, I think they had a vendetta against us. I think they didn't like to see so many, like I said, strong women standing up, using our voices loudly. They didn't like what we were saying about the university president, telling her she needed to stand up for students, even though that's her job. They didn't like that, we were challenging anything at the university in general. So I think they had a long vendetta against us, and yeah. Go ahead.
No, just to the body cams. This is like a aside, but yeah. So USF is one of, I think, only 2 universities that doesn't have body cams. But actually, they were in the process of implementing them before March 6th. I don't think they have them yet. But the president tried to claim to the student government that those body cams were implemented because of what happened to us, which is false because there was an article in the student newspaper about it before March 6th. So just a little insight into USF and what's going on.
And also, I'm sure this is in recent memory of the police, but in 2020, with the pandemic, SDS made not only the administration, but the police take a 10% decrease in their budget. And made the lawsuit against the chief of police well known across campus. This lawsuit says that a former black employee of his, that he is racist, ableist, and sexist. One example is that she walked into her office one day and saw a pig hanging from a toy pig hanging from a noose on her desk. So that's what he's up to, I guess.
First, before my question, I just want to say the state of Florida really fucked up the day they arrested you guys. Because they turned y'all into martyrs that we all stand behind, is what happened. And my next question is, have we, anyone in here looked into the Hong Kong protests and how they avoided arrests and stuff like that by moving like water? That's something I've been wanting to study and see if we can like try to practice, and has anyone else looked into that? No, so,
Are you talking about the hand signs?
No, how they they moved constantly to avoid arrests, like they couldn't pin them down. They started this thing, and they also use like purple lasers to fuck with for surveillance cameras and stuff like that. And that's something I think we should all study are the Hong Kong protests, because that was a recent urban warfare that just happened where the civilians were successful. I'm trying to track down media on that and books and stuff like that, and maybe I can implement that into our book club and stuff like that. And anyways. That's just a suggestion for all of us to look into as organizers of protests, is to move like water. We don't have to constantly be moving, but once the cops start with their bullshit, start that moving, And that's just, suggestion.
Yeah, I know from being on the streets during 2020, the cops liked to kettle a lot, and that was one thing that we really had to go against and really implement with our safety marshals and people that were police liaisons to not only know how to spot a kettle, but to keep you out of the kettle. Mm-hmm. And I know that things with lasers and stuff, that those have actually, that's actually considered, if you shined it at a police officer, that's considered assault on a police officer. So I'm sure it'd be, they would fudge the rules or use their legalese to attack people regardless of the tactics, which is why the only tactic that we can really, one of the big tactics is we have more people. So we really, it's the many against the few, truly.
Oh, no, yeah, for sure. I was just wondering if there's anything that we could do, right now, any petition we could sign on to as individuals or organizations, or any website we want to sign on.
Yeah, so we have a new website now, defendthetampa5.org, and it's got a templated press release there that, if you all, want to release like a statement for us or whatever, it can go to press. That's, just an easy thing people can send. Template flyers. The petition is linked there. If you're in an organization or a union too, because we've been getting lots of union endorsements, which are really important because it represents a lot of people. That's on there. The big thing is mobilizing for December 12th and 13th. For us, that's for everyone in Florida. That's like number one is we want to pack that courtroom and put the fear in the state attorney.
Is that included in the IG bio of just the Tampa5 chance?
Yeah.
The website is
All right, beautiful. Thank you so much.
And a little fact real quick about the Justice for the Tampa5 social media is that they've actually kind of been blocked on Instagram for a little while, actually because of SDS chapters showing solidarity with Palestine, which I think is just really just shows how all this is really connected together and how technology can really try and censor voices that are trying to speak up, and it really impacts like so many different sectors. And obviously we've been standing against that, and it's been all good. But yeah, they're trying to take us down, but we know that they can't.
Our Instagram's back up?
Yeah, Instagram's back up. Any other questions?
I want to add something really quick.
Yeah.
Something I find very funny is I'm trying to get on the website right now, and I think it's gonna be I think they're blocking it.
Defendthetampa5.org.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just there.
Either that or my signal's trash for the other.
Oh, would you? We're in a library signal.
Oh, okay. I'm just
So
going
fingers
with that.
crossed.
Yeah, because I'm on it right now. And the link is in the Orlando for Gender Equality bio. The link to the action page with like all the templates, the petition. We're also going to put it in our story. And if everyone wants to take off the phone and sign the petition real quick, as individuals, and then take it back to your organizations and stuff, and get your work signed up, that'd be amazing. I know that I signed up personally, and that at our next OGE meeting, we're going to sign as an org.
I was going to say another action step you guys can take if you're not already planning on coming on Monday. We're actually putting on a protest at UCF Memory Mall. We have some flyers over here. I believe it is at 1 p.m. I want to say.
Yes.
So yeah, if you are free on Monday, come out to the protest. We have a lot of different student organizations co-sponsoring as well. There's going to be a lot of people out there. But yeah, flyers as you guys are filling out the petition. I'll take one too. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Are we up? Yes.
So, for a student that is the leader of 2 diversity clubs, what advice would you have to help their peers feel more comfortable in their education community and feel more comfortable with pursuing their lives, either identifying as LGBTQ or just living their lives as African American? What advice would you have for them to keep pushing?
Yeah, it's hard. I don't know. Like I said before, like we're all under attack right now, and I think like, something that became really clear, like, with us being attacked, but also other students across the state is like, not to scare anyone, but we were just attacked for protesting. Like, these attacks are so kind of broad and stuff that whether you kind of like are active against them or not, it's like really not uncommon for people to be attacked under these bills. So I think just knowing how important it is to stand up and knowing that like, somebody's got to do it, and it's really impactful to other people. I think one thing that we've really learned is that when you stand up and you use your voice loudly, like other people will follow you, because there's a lot of people who really do care about this stuff and they really do want to organize, but they just don't know how to exactly, or they're, okay, sorry, this is like tangential, but when I joined SDS, I feel like I was like a lot quieter. I like never wanted to speak at events. And all of a sudden I saw these like really cool people who were using their voice, like, not trying to be as quiet as they can, but trying to be as loud as they can to make positive change on campus. And I was so inspired by that. I was like, you know what, I want to be like them. I want to be able to make a change in the world, on campus, and in general. And so I think once people see you being active, they'll want to be active too.
Yeah, I want to mention, because when SDS had its March 6th protest, that was pretty like soon after it became public what was happening with HB 99. So the protests were not big, right? They were like, I think ours started off at 70 people, and then by the time we were done marching, it was like 30 or so. FAU like in late April or early May, had almost 1,000 students walk out against the same bill. Like the movement, despite the repression, grew. So I think there's power in numbers. You know, we should all, you know, it's important for activists to stay in the movement, stick with an organization, connect with other activists, actively do things like knowing your rights, like reading the statutes that protect your right to free speech, do it consciously. You know, like you always have the right to protest outside, on a sidewalk, in the streets. Like that has not legally been taken away. So it's powerful knowing those things, and being in the movement is how you learn.
Yeah, and it's also really powerful knowing your history and how it intersects with other people's and showing solidarity for that. I know as a Puerto Rican learning like Puerto Rican history, it really like solidified my connection with the Palestinian liberation movement, because we too were not allowed to raise our flags, to speak our language, and our, you know, that kind of stuff, and knowing that and knowing the wins that the people have like, you know, fought for and how they fought for them. Obviously, you can't do it in the exact same way, but applying it to like what you see today is definitely helpful, and to see the inspiration, to see like how they did it and, you know, what they won, and to strive for greater. And, you know, if you start speaking and showing your voice, then other people will realize that like you also have your voice, because there's nothing more powerful than what you gotta say.
Final questions? Can we close it out? All right. You want to close it out with a chant? What do y'all want to do? Oh, put you on the spot.
All right. When free speech is under attack, what do?
Stand up, fight back!
When free speech is under attack, what do?
Stand up, fight back!
What do?
Stand up, fight back!
What do we do?
Stand up, fight back!
And then afterwards, we're going to be making some signs just for our protest on Monday. But yeah, we'll take a quick group picture together. I'm going to ask one of them, please.
I'll take it.
Oh, you can? Okay.